Vicky, you need a paper? I got 50 million papers. We are got so many documentation. Thank you. I just want to make sure. On the thing. Just can't. Yeah. Like police academy, or not police academy. What was it? Let me stick it to the Bible here. We're just gonna pray from our heart today about that. Can you hear me? Is it breaking up? All right, perfect. We'll keep it off. It won't break up. Yeah. Because way I like to walk. It just doesn't like me. Testing 1, 2. Perfect. Right. Technical. Pamphlet. Everybody. Car. You.
Everybody's got
You're welcome. Minimum. Pure joke.
those are the branches.
Yeah,
Those branches.
sorry, I'm trying to do better. I listen to myself and I hate to hear myself talk because I feel like I sound like a redneck and I don't like.
It's definitely. It was fine. We understand.
Oh, okay. All right, just making sure. So anytime you do something, you want quality in things. I'm a salesman by heart. That's why I'm 7%. I'm a, there you want and know the real salvation. Know who's going to. What if I heard it? Who's going to carry this? And sometimes you want people, especially in this world we have now, where we have teenagers, we have boys. So I'm gonna rant real quick. It's just something I found out. I'm listening to some teenagers talk, and they're all in high school. They're all going through puberty, and they're already using steroids.
Oh, no.
And it's like, and I'm sitting here, and I'm anti-steroid and anti-steroid for me. I've seen what it's done to all my friends who took it very early in life. It ruins a man. And it's not saying we can't talk about, we do talk in the media a lot of times. We get a lot of women image, right? And that's great. We should talk about image, how young girls see themselves, and we should be correcting that. But we kind of let the boys. If you find right now that the hottest things is these guys. There's a guy named Sam Sherlock or whatever his name is. I can't pronounce his name. He's a bodybuilder. The kid's been on PD since he was probably 18, 19. He's a professional bodybuilder. He's reaping the awards, and young men see that. And I just think, that's too young. And then, unfortunately, coaches want to have winning seasons. Even high school coaches want to have winning seasons because it benefits them, and that gets it. Thank you. It's a thing that, it gets it's the undertow of the water, where now all of a sudden the coach is like, we can get a little bit more pounds on you, we can get a little bit more if we can just get you on this. And I heard a teenage boy I was talking to a teenage boy, and he tells me, I think my testosterone low. I might need to get TRT. And then he's comparing himself to the Silver Age, which men testosterone in the older days were higher than now. We have lost some testosterone in us and all that. And I was like, you're a teenager. going through puberty, you are a machine of testosterone. You don't need no more. And so we have all these people on the internet that promote manhood, and to the point where now it's like, you come up to these women they call Karens, you get to give them equal rights for equal rights, play on words there. And I have no problem with people defending themselves and all that, but don't defend yourself against a 120-pound woman. You're more muscle than she is. I know we this gender thing and his identity is getting all mixed up, but you can be a caricature of everything all day long. You're not a thing, all right? And a real man knows how to control, and I found these too. I get in arguments with my wife. She wins every argument somehow, but we're all there. So we're all striving and struggling. So, but I don't put my hands on her, and I don't strike her. I don't do that kind of stuff, and you shouldn't either. You know what I'm saying? A man is strong. I worked in and out of construction most of my life since I was 16 because I was a dropout. I don't have a doctorate degree or anything like that. I like to read. I read books. I share the books I read with y'all. That's what we're doing here. Basically, you're coming on a book study with Ben, right? So I know the advanced degrees, and I'm not going to lie to you about them. But that don't mean we can't understand things. That don't mean we can't learn things or anything like that. All right? And I respect anybody, even the atheist scholars. I respect them all because they have put in the work. They have put in the work. Even if I don't agree with them, because you will find things you do agree with them on some things. You're like, well, that makes sense. But you might not like the conclusion. You might think the conclusion is a little crazy.
The best lies are the ones that have truth in it.
That's right. And so, but being someone that worked in construction, I met real men. I met some bad men too, but I met some real men, some good men that go to work every day. They sweat, they bleed, their knuckles to the ground. And I met men from all walks of life, even people that, I might disagree with in things that they were doing, but they were trying to feed their family at the end of the day. I'm not pro illegal immigration. I'm just going to put it out there. You don't like me, I can't help that. I'm not. You got to have borders. You got to have borders because you got to know who's here. You got to know who's here because it's there to protect the citizens. But at the same time, I work with guys that were here illegally, and I know what they wanted, and a lot of them weren't bad. A lot of them were just trying to get by, even though it does affect our wages at the bottom. That's what people don't understand. It affects the economic wages. But at the same time, you had to respect the fact that this man traveled to another country to sweat right next to you. So I've seen it from both ends. And it does affect. I think we charge at one time. I'll show you how it affects the economics, and then we'll move on. So we used to charge $1.50 a block when we laid blocks. A long time ago. This is old numbers. I could be a little off on the numbers, but it was somewhere around $1.50 a block, right? So we would lay block, $1.50 a block. The reason why that's $1.50 a block, because that guy has to pay for my, my insurance. He has to pay for if I had insurance, which I don't think we had insurance at the time, but he had to pay for the taxes that was going to come out of my check. But when you hire people that you don't have to pay all that baggage to, guess what we were competing against? People that I was hiring, people that weren't here illegally, at 50 cents a block. You see the problem with that? It causes an artificial bubble in how to construct a house. Affects everything. And that bubble ripples through the whole economy. It artificially inflates and deflates. And then you can't budget. You can't budget properly. And that's one of the effects of it. Does that affect you? Yeah, it does affect you. It affects the dollar. It affects housing. It affects rent. It affects all that. I mean, that don't mean I can't at the same time look at the man and go, I respect that fact that you're willing to do everything you can to be here to work. I just would ask to do legally, But I don't mean he's not less of a man. If you need to feed and eat, this is my liberal side of me, I guess. If you have to eat, what would you do to eat? You do whatever you can, right? So there you go. That's the war inside of me. Now you know.
To get you back on track.
Yeah.
I stole this, but do you know what happens if two ICE agents have a baby?
What?
ICE baby.
Oh my God.
All right, now back on track.
All right. Anyways, so that was just my rant. Talk about. I guess I started out that, to me, a good man, let me wrap this up, what a good man is. I think a good man is a man that gets up every day, he puts his pants on, he goes out there and he tries to do the best he can. He doesn't try to hurt nobody, infect nobody, and when he sees something wrong, my dad always said, if you see something, evil only triumphs of good men do nothing. I know it comes from a poem, I don't remember the poem name, but he used to quote it to me all the time. And that got me in a lot of situations because I'm like, well, I'm a good man, I got to do something. I've got me in a lot of situations. And so, it's right. You can write a law all day long. Without someone behind to enforce the law, you don't have a law. And a lot of men, mainly men, I'm not trying to, belittle women here or nothing like that. I just want to focus on men for a minute. There's a lot of men that put their life on the line. A lot of men that goes home with that stress. And I don't care how manly they are. You pull a trigger, you take someone's life, everybody has effect. I know I got a friend that has PTSD from that. Every man has effect from that. And so I think we need to honor the honorable and put away the unhonorable ones. And the only way we can do that is, if you're a grandparent or you're a parent, you need to be making sure you know what your kids are watching on the internet and who they're hanging out with. I don't care if it's Coach Johnson, okay? Because these people are pushing things on your kids that are going to affect your kids. PEDs will affect you the rest of your life if you take them. I'm just being honest with you. So I know we don't have a lot of 15-year-olds in here, 16-year-olds in here. I just want to, so if someone comes along on this video, I want them to hear that rant. You don't need it. God made you beautiful. You can overcome it, especially a teenager. You ain't got nothing to worry about. Anyways, so with that saying being, with that wrapped up, we're going to start back at Purity Lines of Israel and Early Judaism, because we do have a lot of reading to get through.
What page?
5. It should be on 5.
Okay.
Number 5. That's after 4 before 6. Just so you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Like I said earlier, I do have the second thing I want to go into is this is I hope I got picked up. But this is the next document we're going to go over. It's going to come out of a book called Behind the Scenes of the Old Testament by Dr. John Walton. John Walton is an ancient Israeli expert, and it's talking about temples. The reason why this is important, because you have to understand the cleanliness, because we're going over cleanliness and purity. Even though this is based for New Testament, this is kind of based on Old Testament. You got to understand how the temple works. If you understand how the temple works, you understand how you're saved through the blood of Jesus Christ. You might find out that a lot of stuff on the internet is not accurate. And that's okay. Yeah, I know. Shocker. So anyways, the ideal of a temple, the cosmic role of the temple, the role of the divine and human relations of the great symbols. So I lean toward, just so you know, I lean towards all this stuff. When I read Genesis, especially chapter 1 and 2, I don't read it as a creation story, as a literal story 6,000 years ago and all that stuff. That's not saying I don't agree or disagree with that. But you have to understand it's a literature book based in a actual literature, right? And it has its own category. And what Genesis is a temple codex. And what a temple codex is a establishment of order, of creation from chaos in order of worship. That's why you got 6 days there. That's why it finishes up with man, and that's why God sits on the throne and rests. God doesn't rest. So what's going on there? Well, way I would tell you, if you ask me, and so no one asked, but I'll tell you anyways, is that God is sitting on his throne. God is resting because he's sitting on his throne. In ancient Semitic cultures, when a king took over another city, they would have a festival, basically, and Rome's a great example of this, because they had what they call Pax Romana, the peace of Rome. And what the emperor would do, he would wait outside, they would come in, blow trumpets, send their evangelists in, tell you how you've been saved by the great emperor, whoever. And then he would come in and he would sit on the throne. And then the kingdom was at rest because the kingdom was at peace. When God says rest in Genesis 6, he's talking about establishing peace because everything is in its right order and chaos has been put out. So creation story is God has overcome chaos because now he rests on the throne and we can have pure worship. He leaves the throne, right? Because what happens? Chaos comes into he separates himself from us because chaos enters into the Garden of Eden through the serpent. Because it's all about communal meals. Adam and Eve would walk with God in the evening, and they would have a meal. What meal was that? That meal came off the tree of life. They ate from the tree of life with God every day. That's what's going on there. That's what we're doing up there. You want to understand where your Eucharist comes from? That's where it comes from. It starts there and it ends there. And so then what happened was they had a meal with the serpent. And so once they had the meal with the serpent, when you have a meal with somebody, you are in communion with that person. And once they had a communion with the serpent, they were no longer in communion with God. And so God, who is pure and holy, he can't get around something that's not pure and holy. He will destroy it. So they lost their first state. And I think once you understand that this is about cleanliness and uncleanliness, and God is trying to get us back into a clean state, so shocker, Jesus Christ, the blood of Jesus Christ, right? Once you realize God is bringing us back into that clean state, then he can have relationship with you because you are now holy, set apart unto the worship of God or the works of God. So there, I just gave you a really quick overview. So as that, let's start with purity lines of Israel and early Judaism. All right. God commanded Aaron to distinguish between the holy and the common, and between the unclean and the clean, and to teach the people how to do the same. If you are in Judaism, this is a major thing. Cleanliness and uncleanliness is a very important thing to even modern day Jews. If you go to a really Orthodox church, you'll know that they take it super serious.
Talking about the Eastern Orthodox?
Not Eastern Orthodox Christians. I'm talking about Orthodox Jews.
Okay.
If you go to an Orthodox Jewish community, you'll find they take this ultra serious. They still practice mikvah. They do all that the best they can. If during Passover, they will throw out anything that even has a piece of bread. If it's been burnt onto a pan and you can't get it off, they'll throw the whole pan away because you can't have no leaven in your house. So they take it serious. If you're going to have a relationship with God, you have to be Kodesh. So this verse introduced, or Leviticus 10:10, this verse introduced us to two main pairs of terms used within Israel to construct the purity maps. Each pair has a neutral term and more loaded term. Common or profane is a neutral term, referring to the ordinary spaces and things of the world that are accessible to human beings. Holy is the corresponding loaded term, referring to special spaces and things that have been set apart from the ordinary or common, as belonging to some special way to God. Clean is neutral term, referring generally to a person or thing in its normal proper state. Unclean, corresponding loaded term, denoting that something has crossed the line from the normal state into a dangerous state of pollution. Breaches of boundaries rendered something unclean, as when a person has a discharge or a torn surface. Leprosy, for example. When an animal combine characteristics thought to be proper to a different environment, like a lobster who has legs, not really a fin, who lived in the sea but walks on legs. Lobster are unclean because they don't fit in the natural order. They don't seem to fit in the natural order. These are religious terms, not biological terms. One would use the category from each pair to describe any single object or person at a given time. The typical Israelite would be clean and common most of the time. If a woman suffered a bloody discharge, for example, she would become unclean and common. The tithes collected for the priests were clean and holy. Of course, it was money. Clean and holy, while food sold in the market was supposed to be clean and common. So no pork. You go to a Jewish marketplace, you get no pork. No bacon, sorry. The former were thus to be eaten only by the holy priests in a state of cleanliness, and if the common by lay Israelites ate them, he or she would profane that was holy and risk divine wrath. Where do we see that this happens that doesn't get divine wrath? King David is running away from Saul. He stops at the temple because the temple priest is on his side.
And gets the bread.
He takes the showbread, which is only meant to be eaten by the priests. He also gets Goliath's sword. Read it, says it. Because Goliath stole the temple after he defeated him with his own sword. He knocks him out with a stone, but he cuts his head off with his own sword. He eats the bread. David was not punished for that. David lived.
Because, why was he not punished?
Because he had to get that Messiah in here. It doesn't say. It leaves it up to
It's
your,
always left
it leaves it up to you. And, well, I guess in one sense, was
He
Saul,
was chosen by God.
David was chosen by God. He was anointed by God. You could say, well, there was anointing there, right?
Okay.
You could say that. You could probably justify there. He's also running away from Saul, who wants to murder him because he's lost his anointing, right? And demons come in that night, and they rattle his mind, and David would come in and play the harp, all right?
Well, didn't it also have it where Jews, there was like exceptions if they were out in the wilderness, whatever, and they were starving, and they could eat a pig rather than die?
No.
I thought
Nope,
they
there's
were-
no exception to that.
I thought there was.
Joshua makes it clear nothing unclean is going to touch him. Joshua makes it clear he would rather die than eat anything or do anything against Torah. There's no exception. Now there is a greater, like there is a like a religious philosophical thought process where there's a greater good, right? And that would be the example that I could give you on that would be like during the Maccabean Wars with Antiochus. The one group of Jews are celebrating Shabbat, and it's Saturday, and they're all having Shabbat and just Shabbating along, and the Gentiles, the Greeks, come in and wipe them all out because they refused to take up the swords because it was Shabbat, and they didn't want to work on Shabbat, and they considered it a work. The Maccabeans, the leadership of the Maccabeans get together and say, hey, if we keep fighting like this, there ain't going to be anybody left to fight. So they use the philosophical understanding of the greater good. And they said, it is greater that we fight on the Sabbath than not to fight, so there will be someone here to worship God on the Sabbath, as he commanded us. So that would be your greater good thought. But to touch, to be unclean, then, so this is why I think it's Maccabees 4. I think it's either 3 or 4 where they find the dead bodies that have the idols, the Jews who are dead, who died in battle, and they had the idols, and that's when the Maccabean leader, I forget which one, maybe Jonathan, I can't remember, it's been a long time since I read it. He offers up the prayer of the dead. So that's where the prayer of the dead thing really starts taking off. Even Christianity uses that, like Catholics, if you're anything where you're praying for the dead, it's usually the verse they're going to go to.